Enterprise PDM today, so we're going to switch hats and I'm going to talk a little bit about SolidWorks. Some tips and tricks for overcoming some SolidWorks installation woes. So our agenda today is we're going to start by looking at some installation prereqs. This is going to have to do with hardware as well as software requirements or recommendations. We'll look at networking requirements, specifically if you are using a floating license structure, so in other words, a network license. We're going to continue on to some permissions requirements and recommendations that are going to help the installation move much more smoothly. Hopefully we don't get any kind of failures. We'll take a moment to discuss upgrading SolidWorks versus doing a new installation of SolidWorks, some pros and cons. Then we'll take a look at best practices and some tips and tricks for troubleshooting any kind of installation problems or to prevent installation problems. And then we'll follow up with where to find help, either on your computer by looking at different log files or by contacting your technical support reps or looking on the SolidWorks website for additional assistance. So for the installation prereqs, the hardware requirements and software requirements do kind of depend on the version year and the level of usage. What I mean by that is if you're going to be using SolidWorks to create kind of simplified parts and assemblies, you're going to need certain hardware that's going to be at a lower level than someone who's going to be utilizing the simulation packages trying to run some FEA analysis. So hardware and software requirements are version year and level of usage dependent, but there's also kind of baseline minimum requirements. Those requirements can be found at the SolidWorks webpage. So I'm going to click on this link here. And we're going to take a look at the SolidWorks System Requirements webpage. How I got here, in case you wanted to find it on your own, is open up a web browser and go to solidworks.com. If you hover over the support link, there's a System Requirements Resources page. On here, we have the SolidWorks System Requirements, and if you use the Enterprise PDM Product Data Management System, there's also a Data Management System Requirements link. We're going to be focusing on SolidWorks today. So in here, we have some minimum software and hardware requirements. SolidWorks 2015 is going to be able to be used on multiple different operating systems. They have a minimum hardware of 8 gigs, but it is recommended to have more than 8 gigabytes of RAM. The disk space is 8 gigs or more. The video card information, you can take a look at this additional link here that's going to go over the graphics card drivers. So you basically fill out the information for your computer specs and the version year of SolidWorks that you're going to be using, and it's going to let you know which graphics card is recommended and what drivers are recommended for your setup for the new version year. Processor and installation media information, as well as some other software, for example, Excel and Word. It's recommended for 2010, 2013, etc. So there's a lot of information here for the System Requirements webpage at SolidWorks, but I do want to let you know that if you contact TriMech and ask for some information for hardware recommendations, we created a PDF that we update every year for hardware recommendations for use with SolidWorks. As you can see, I'm looking at the last page of this document, and it shows the entry-level, mid-range, and high-end usage of SolidWorks, and it kind of explains what the user needs are. So as you can see, for a entry-level, users with light to no analysis tools, assemblies up to 300 parts, some sheet metal and light surfacing, we give some examples of recommendations for processor, RAM, hard drive, video card, operating system, some additional software, and then we give suggested desktop models and suggested laptop models. Now these recommendations, we give multiple different types of desktop and laptop recommendations, most specifically because we don't endorse any one of these particular products. These are just examples of desktops and laptops that you could use and find success based on your level of usage. So if you would like a copy of this, you can contact the technical support group at TriMech and ask for a copy of the 2015 hardware recommendations or a previous year if you would like. So let me go back in here. Also, I want to talk about the installation prereqs that are required by SolidWorks before the actual software is installed. So if you have access to the installation media, either from a download from the SolidWorks website using the customer portal, or from the DVD or the disk that's been provided to you by SolidWorks, there is a prereqs folder inside of that disk. So if I go over to a new computer window, I've got access to the SolidWorks installation files for 2015 SP3. Inside of these installation file set is a prereqs folder. In that folder, you can see quite a few different required software components that are necessary to install properly before SolidWorks can be installed. Now, if these do not exist on your computer prior to starting the SolidWorks Installation Manager, fret not. SolidWorks is going to attempt to install these prereqs as part of the installation process. But if there are any problems, or maybe the files didn't download properly, it's a good idea to try and install these individually, or if you know that the VSTA, which is Visual Studio Tools for Applications, is not installing properly, you can come in here and try and run it as an administrator or install it or repair it. So the prereqs folder lists out all of the C++ redistributables that are necessary, VBA, Bonjour, .NET frameworks, and then if you're using the electrical components, the SQL Server information as well. So the prereqs folder inside of the installation media set is also a good place to look for software that is necessary to run SolidWorks and to install SolidWorks properly. So now let's talk about networking requirements. So if you're using a floating type of license, in other words, you have a SolidWorks seat that is on a network, you're going to want to make sure before you go through and upgrade that the Solid Network License Manager on the server is upgraded first. And that's because if you have 2015 Service Pack 2 installed, and the server component of the Solid Network License Manager is also 2015 Service Pack 2. If you upgrade to Service Pack 3 or Service Pack 4, the Network License Manager has not been updated and cannot give you a license. The Solid Network License Manager must be at the same level or higher in order for it to divvy out licenses. So keep it in mind that the Solid Network License Manager on the server must be at the same version year in Service Pack or higher than the computer that you have at your desk with SolidWorks installed on it in order to divvy out licenses. Once the server version of the Solid Network License Manager is upgraded, it's going to try and give the licenses out over very specific port numbers. The default ports that it's going to connect through over the network are 25734, and if you have a firewall in place, 25735. So you're going to want to either go through and open up the ports if you have a firewall installed and running on the server, as well as any computer that has SolidWorks installed on it, for ports 25734 and 25735. You might need to get help from your IT department or your IT manager to have those ports opened. But it's recommended before you go through and start installing or upgrading, make sure the ports are opened and the Solid Network License Manager is upgraded. I also want to make note of additional software. The PDM software, as well as the electrical software and a few others, might be utilizing the Solid Network License Manager as well. Or you might have an enterprise PDM setup which has different port numbers assigned to it for sending information back and forth. And so you might want to also double check to see if those ports have been opened in the firewall as well. Just to let you know, as a side note, Enterprise PDM 2015 has changed the licensing structure, so now it utilizes the Solid Network License Manager as well as all the other SolidWorks products. This has changed in 2015. So if you have Enterprise PDM and you're planning on upgrading SolidWorks along with EPDM at the same time, you're going to want to make sure that 25734 and 25735 ports are open, whether or not you have a floating SolidWorks license. So installation files, how are you going to access them and where are they going to be stored? If you get a DVD or a disc from a value-added reseller or from SolidWorks, you might choose to put those installation files on a network drive. Okay? That way, more than one person can access those files. They're stored centrally. You also might choose to download the files from SolidWorks directly through the customer portal. The last option could be, if you're a TriMech customer, you could contact technical support and we can give you a link to our share file location where we store the files for the installation of SolidWorks. It's a little bit of a safer way of downloading the files. Not as many people are accessing the share file location compared to the SolidWorks servers, where anyone in the world, technically, can access those files. So there's less traffic. You'll have less chances of corrupt installation files downloading from our share file than from the SolidWorks server. So those files, however you choose to obtain them, if you store the installation files on the network, just be aware that the traffic within the company might increase over the network to obtain those installation files. Depending upon network speeds and times of usage, you might find it's better to use an admin image, or you might find it's better to store those installation files on the local computer rather than the network. Speaking of admin images, it might make sense to create an admin image and store it on the network as well. Just be aware that if you have 100, 200 different users trying to access the admin image installation files, it could cause a little bit of a bottleneck in your network. So make sure that if you're going to be transferring files over the network, that you have a good, strong connection. Try and spread out the installations so that you're not trying to have too many people try and access those files at one time. Let's take a look at permissions requirements. So if you ever try and install a program and you get a little pop-up that says, are you really sure you want to install this? That's kind of related to the user account control settings in the Windows 7 and Windows 8 platform. User account control settings can wreak havoc on an installation. It's recommended that you change your user account control settings to a level called Never Notify just during the installation process. If your IT department or your company's security requirements don't allow you to drop this level down to Never Notify, it's kind of best if you get an exception just for the installation of SolidWorks. Administrative rights, we also recommend to have administrative rights. It's kind of needed to access certain folders with read-write permissions, such as inside of C program files or inside of the C drive in program files x86. There's a few different folders that are deep down in your operating system in your computer that SolidWorks accesses, and we need to be able to have administrative rights to read or write into those folders. Also, the administrative rights usually give us access to the registry keys. SolidWorks, when it installs or upgrades, has to have access to certain registry keys to update information about where template files are stored, or to update information about some settings inside of SolidWorks. So having access to registry keys is extremely important. Being able to write to those registry keys, which is why we recommend that you have an account that has administrative rights that you use for the installation or the upgrade. Also, if possible, disable the antivirus. The antivirus programs that run on a computer can also wreak havoc during the installation process. If your IT department or if your company's security requirements really don't allow you to disable the antivirus, again, preferably try and get an exception just during the installation of SolidWorks. If you are planning on using simulation, the simulation packages, it's also recommended to try and have those antivirus programs disabled or configured to allow certain key components to run without being checked or prohibited. So if you want some additional information about which programs or what folder locations the antivirus programs should be configured to avoid or look over or basically be disabled for those sections, you can always talk to our technical support representatives as well. So let's talk about upgrading versus new install of SolidWorks, the pros and cons. So for the upgrade, obviously it's going to take less time. It's definitely a pro. If you're going from service pack to service pack, there are less files to download. So the chances of having files downloaded corrupt is decreased dramatically. So upgrading, less time, less files to download. So much less chance of having corrupt files. Also, for new installs, the pros would be you can maintain multiple installed versions at a time. What I mean by that is if you currently have SolidWorks 2014 installed, if you choose during the installation procedure to do a new install of 2015, you'll be able to maintain both 2014 SolidWorks and 2015 SolidWorks on a single computer. The benefit of that is if you have customers or clients who have different version years, they haven't been able to upgrade yet, you'll be able to work in the same version year of SolidWorks that they're working in, so there's no compatibility issues. Also with new installs, the pros could be that you can start fresh. If you're having some weird issues or dialog boxes aren't popping up properly or you're getting some errors, you can choose to do a clean uninstall and then a new install of SolidWorks, or simply choose to do a new install and maintain your old install, and you'll be able to have a fresh start with SolidWorks. The cons for upgrading are you could accidentally upgrade a network toolbox. What I mean by that is the SolidWorks toolbox can be installed and configured to be stored on a network location. You can have multiple different users accessing the same toolbox, which is actually kind of desired and recommended. But if you upgrade SolidWorks and you are currently pointing to a network stored toolbox, you could upgrade accidentally the toolbox ahead of everyone else. So no one else in your organization, no one else in your company can use the new toolbox because it's a different version year. It's a different version. So you've got to be really careful about upgrading SolidWorks and making very sure that you are aware of where the toolbox is and whether or not you want to upgrade it. Also, after upgrading, we've noticed here at TriMech that some of the file locations are pointed to the incorrect folder places. So for example, excuse me, the properties.txt file that is used inside of the custom properties for SolidWorks files, when you do an upgrade, the location is either still pointing to the previous version year's folder location, which no longer has that file stored in it, or it might not have gotten installed properly, and so the file is no longer in the correct location. So it can cause problems with template file locations, sheet metal gauge tables, weldment profiles. Some of those locations are either stored incorrectly in the registry keys or didn't get upgraded properly. For new install cons, obviously it takes longer. It takes a lot longer to install SolidWorks as a new install versus upgrading from a service pack to a new service pack, or even from a version year to a version year. The download definitely takes longer, so the chances of corrupt files is increased dramatically as well. So you might find that you want to upgrade. You might find you want to do a new install. It's really up to you. Just be aware of some of the possible problems that you're going to run into. And don't forget, you can always search for additional help or contact your technical support representatives to assist with any kind of install problems. Speaking of problems, let's take a look at best practices, tips, and tricks. So number one, make sure you have all necessary install files. So you can either download them, or if you have problems with downloading, contact your local value-added reseller and ask for a copy of the DVD to be sent to you. Once again, TriMech has access to a share file location, so if you're a TriMech customer, you can contact our technical support representatives and they will be able to provide you with a link to our share file so that you can download all the necessary installation files. If you're doing a new install on a new computer, you might need to transfer your activation or transfer your license prior to going through with the installation. Every single standalone seat of SolidWorks has an activation tied to it. So when you install SolidWorks and you open it up for the very first time, it's going to prompt you to activate. If the license is stuck on your old computer, you won't be able to activate on your new computer. You won't be able to access SolidWorks until you can activate on the new computer. So make sure to check to see if you need to release the activation from an older computer. If you have a network license type for SolidWorks, you're going to want to make sure that those firewall ports are open. Once again, that's 25734 and 25735. You're also going to want to make sure that the Solid Network License Manager on the server is going to be at the same version year and service pack that you're installing, or at a higher version year and service pack than you're installing. Verify, if at all possible, that the antivirus is disabled. Once again, if you can't disable the antivirus, it can cause problems with the installation. Verify, if possible, that your user account control settings are set to never notify. Once again, if you can't, it could potentially cause some issues with the installation. Verify that you're using an administrator level account. If you are using a Windows Active Directory account, basically a user account, that is not at an administrative level, then you're going to want to talk to someone within your IT department to either temporarily give you administrative rights or have them assist with the installation process. Check those prereqs. Make sure that the prereqs that are found inside of that folder on the installation media set called prereqs, make sure that all of those prereqs are installed ahead of time, or just be aware that when you go through the installation process with SolidWorks, it's going to attempt to install those before it installs the SolidWorks software. Also, it's a good idea to verify that your graphics card driver is up to date for the new version. You're going to want to make sure that they're compatible. So again, on that SolidWorks system requirements webpage that we took a look at earlier, it's a good idea to put in your computer specifications and see what the graphics card driver should be for the newer version. Also, it's a good idea to verify whether or not you have communication to the SolidWorks server if you're going to download or if you're going to activate. So you can do some ping tests or some other additional tests that I'm going to show you in a moment to make sure that you are actively able to connect to SolidWorks servers for either downloading the installation files or for activating the software. So let's look at some of these ping tests that I talked about beforehand. The ping test is going to be run inside of the command prompt. Essentially what it does is make certain that you have network connection between your computer and some other computer. So we would want to open up the command prompt and type ping space and then whatever the server name is. I've listed here a couple of the different SolidWorks server locations that you can test to make sure that you're going to be able to download from SolidWorks directly. So let me go ahead and open up a command prompt. So I'm going to click on my Start button, and if I type CMD, I have the ability to open up this command prompt. You might have to right-click and choose Run as Administrator. As long as you have administrative rights, that should be just fine. So let me go ahead and pull this up over here, and what I'm going to do is do a ping test to make sure that I have access to the downloads for SolidWorks. So all I'm doing is typing ping space dl-ak.solidworks.com. The ping is going through. I'm getting some information back. Sent 4, received 4. I have 0% loss, so I'm able to actively connect. The next one would be the ping im -ak.solidworks, oops, make sure I spell it right, .com. So here I'm verifying that I still have connection with this other server. 0% loss, we're good to go. Telnet, on the other hand, the telnet command allows me to make sure that the ports are open. We talked about 25734 and 25735. This test lets me know whether or not there's something that's blocking that port number. So in other words, if I'm trying to pull a serial number, pull a license from the Solid Network License Manager on the server, I might want to do the telnet test to see if the ports are open. So for example, using the command prompt again, okay, I'm going to type in telnet space, the name of the server. I'm going to use my computer, and then a space, and then the port number, 25734. When I press enter, telnet is not recognized as an internal or external command. You might get this. This means that on your computer, the telnet service has not been turned on. So to turn that on, we simply need to go to the control panel, to the Programs and Features section, turn Windows features on or off. This takes a moment for it to load. And then once it loads, there's a couple of different options here for the telnet client, which would be your computer, and the telnet server. So these have to be on at both your computer and the server in order to run. So you might need to get your IT people involved in order to turn that telnet server command on for the server that houses or runs the Solid Network License Manager. For your computer, you would need to simply turn on the telnet client. Again, this might require administrative rights, so you might have to get in touch with your IT department to turn this on or off. While we're waiting for this to finish up, there we go, I'm going to go ahead and run that command one more time, and we're connecting to my computer over the port 25734. A blank screen with a blinking cursor means that the telnet worked properly. So this is good. This means that the telnet was able to connect to the computer over that port. If you get anything other than a blank black screen with a blinking cursor, then the telnet did not work. UAC, let's talk about user account control settings. It's definitely best to have those set to never notify. So how do I do that? Let me go ahead and jump on over, click on my Start menu, and in this search box, I simply need to type UAC. When I type UAC, you'll see it says Change User Account Control Settings. If I open this up, I always want this to be down here towards the bottom, Never Notify. Once I make a change to this User Account Control Settings interface and I click OK, it does require a reboot of the computer in order to make the changes take effect. So, Start menu, type in UAC in the search box, open the User Account Control Settings, change that bar down to Never Notify, and restart the computer. Let's talk about the administrative level account. So how do you tell what type of account you have? We want to make sure that you have an administrative level account so that you have access to certain folders and certain registry keys on your computer so SolidWorks has the ability to install properly. So let me go ahead and jump back over, and we're going to start by clicking on the Start menu and start typing User Accounts. There's my user accounts. I'm going to open it up, and in here I'm going to manage user accounts. You might need to have administrative rights to even get in here, so that could stop you. Once I'm in the user accounts, I'm going to simply select one of these accounts. For this computer called Catherine HP, I can see that I'm already part of the administrators group. But if I wanted to dig a little further, I can click on the properties, go to the group membership, and I can see that I truly am part of the administrator group. If I was a standard user, I would want to switch this to administrator, click apply, and click OK. So that's how you can verify if you're an administrator or not. Let's talk about verifying connection for activation. This is kind of interesting because it has to be run inside of Internet Explorer. If you have a standalone license for SolidWorks, it's a good idea to at least see if you're going to be able to activate, if there's any kind of problems connecting to their Activation Manager server. So it must be run inside of Internet Explorer. So let me go ahead and open up Internet Explorer here. Got it somewhere. I don't use it very often. There we go. Let me move this over so that I can see the website address. Essentially, we want to choose HTTPS. See if I have it up already. Activate, there it is. SolidWorks.com activation.asp?ping equals 1. Simply press enter, and what you want is a blank white screen. So if you get a blank screen, you have connection. If you get anything else, you're not going to be able to activate because something within your network is blocking the access to that particular location at SolidWorks. So it could be an antivirus, it could be a firewall, it could be a network, it could be a lot of different possible options here. So verify the connection for any kind of activation. Where to find help? So what if something goes wrong? The install fails. Where do you go? First place you're going to go to is the installation logs. The installation logs are going to be found in C users, your username, app data, roaming, SolidWorks installation logs, and then it's going to have the version you're in service pack that it just tried to install with. The two different pieces of information that you can search for inside of the install logs that will take you to the code or the reason why the install failed are error code with no space and return value 3. So for example, if I did an installation and I had some problems, I would want to go to C users, my user account, app data, roaming, SolidWorks, installation logs, and there's 2015 SP4. In here, I've got two different log files. This is the summary installation manager log. I also have some other logs. In here, we have potentially some more information if there were any kind of problems. So if I open up this installation log, I have the ability to use my Control F. So I typed CTRL plus the F. So I held down the control key and I clicked on F to open this up. And I can look for the word error code. I didn't have any installation problems, so there's no error code messages. I can also look for return value 3. Again, I didn't have any installation problems, so there's no errors associated with the value, return value 3, to show that the installation failed. But if you do have problems, you will probably find some information using either error code or return value 3 inside the installation logs. I do want to point out that in order to see the app data folder, which is a hidden folder, you have to turn on hidden folders. What I mean by that is going down to the Organize drop-down menu, choosing Folder and Search options. Under the View tab, under Hidden Files and Folders, you're going to want to turn on Show Hidden Files, Folders, and Drives. Click Apply, click OK, and now you will see that app data folder. If you do not show hidden files, folders, and drives, you will not be able to see this folder. Hence, you will not be able to go to App Data, Roaming, SolidWorks, Installation Logs, and access your log files. Let's talk about Event Viewer Logs. Event Viewer Logs are available on the Windows operating system. They give information about the operating system and any applications on the operating system that may have had problems, or it's just information about what's been going on recently. So to find the event viewer logs, you can either go to See Windows System 32 and then open up the eventviewer.msc, or you can click on your search and start typing Event Viewer. The Event Viewer program should open when you click on it. And inside of this interface for the Event Viewer, we have access to the Windows logs. There's an application log and there's a system log. These logs show information about applications and systems. Now, it's a lot of information. As you can see, I have 20,000 events for the application log. So it's a good idea to maybe filter the log file. Let's open up the system here. Less events for it to load. So you can see there's a whole bunch of information, and it looks like there were a couple of errors. So for the filtering of these logs, we click on Filter Current Log, choose Critical, Warning, and Error. Those are the only event levels I want to see at this point in time. Click OK, and I now have access to only the error messages, the warnings, and the critical messages. Okay. At this point, if I wanted to send this file to my local technical support representative, I would want to save the filtered log file onto an easily accessible location, like, for example, my desktop, and I would call this my system log. Choose this to be an event file. When I save it, I can show display information for English. If I wanted to, I recommend it, and click OK. So then I'll be able to send my event viewer system log file to my local value-added resellers technical support representative. There's also additional information inside of the customer portal knowledge base. If you run the error code and the return value 3 searches inside of your installation logs and you get a code that you want to look up, you can go to the customer portal website, which is found at solidworks.com, and you can click on the knowledge base and search for those different terms. You can also take a look at the SolidWorks forums, which again is going to be through the customer portal, and then you can search through the forums for other SolidWorks users who may have come across the same issue. And then, of course, last but definitely not least, is going to be your local value-added reseller or your local VARs technical support resources. So I just want to say thank you very much for watching the SolidWorks support tips and tricks, overcoming SolidWorks installation woes. My name is Catherine Smith once again, and I believe we're going to take a look at if there's any kind of questions that are available.
Thanks, Catherine. That was great. We could probably have like another webinar just on the installation woes.
Probably.
All right. Is there any questions out there? While we're waiting, I just wanted y'all to know that we do record our webinars every week, and so if you want to go back and listen to them again, you can go to our site, TriMech.com, and then at the upper right-hand corner there, you'll see our YouTube channel, and you can click on that, and all of our webinars are right there. All right, any questions? All right, well, it doesn't look like there's any questions at this time, so we just want to thank you all for joining us and hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.